Kolkata. As far as city nicknames go, it's probably gotten one of the best. The city of joy. But sometimes you find out that a nickname is simply, well, just a label. And some cities live up to it more than others. Is Philadelphia really the city of brotherly love? LA the city of angels? Paris, are you for real the city of light? I'll leave that to others to discuss. Right now, my attention is here in eastern India, in the city of Kolkata. It's my first time in India, and I'm looking forward to exploring the city. This is my second time trying to come here, so I'm really excited to meet people and explore some of the unique local traditions. I'm with Arvind and Subham, and they're going to help me get to know this place, starting with the Masjid, one of the largest Islamic holy sites in Kolkata, right in the heart of old Kolkata. This is one of the busiest streets in the city, typically. Right now it's a little less busy because of the heavy storm that just came through, but it's still pretty busy by my standards, so people have only slowed down a little bit. Crowded, busy cities and joy aren't often associated with each other. But I suppose if any city dares to be the exception to the rule, it's gonna be Kolkata. So I like to do a little bit of research before visiting a place, and I tried looking up, why is Kolkata called the City of Joy? I was curious if there was a story behind that, and it seemed like most people were on the same page about how Kolkata is simply just full of activity and had a certain vibrancy and color to it. And I did find one possible origin, but there's some complexity around it. Now, the original origins are perhaps lost to history, but the way it became popular was because of a book set in Kolkata called City of Joy by Dominique Lapierre. This book, its story takes place in a slum where there's intense poverty and life is really difficult, but still the people who live there are happy. Despite everything, they have this resolve that life is worth living, and the name of their slum is called Anand Nagar, which roughly translates to City of Joy. This slum is a real place. You can still go there. It's a little more developed now, and most people call it Pilkana. And I got to admit, I have a lot of problems with this trope of, oh, these people are so poor and yet they're so happy. I think sometimes that leads to us romanticizing poverty and not addressing the systemic stuff behind it. Now, City of Joy is probably a textbook example of that way of thinking. However, at the time it came out, it was probably a course correction for people who conflated poverty with misery and wealth with happiness. And while that whole thing is complicated, maybe Kolkata can just be a reminder that happiness and wealth run on different tracks. Would you believe that this is 5:30 a.m. in Kolkata? I couldn't believe how bright it was for how early it was, but here we were. The construct of time was really going to do a number on me on this trip. The sunlight made it look like it was getting close to noon. Now that was scary, because it probably meant we were in for a hot day. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But first, chai. Okay, well, you can't go to India without having some chai, so I'm glad we started with this. I love watching the chaiwalas do their pulls. If you were to see a barista do that in a chai shop where I'm from, you'd think they were just being extra. But look at the setup. Nothing else about it is extra. The chai pull isn't some stunt. It happens to look impressive, but there's a purpose. It aerates the liquid. It adds to that fluffy texture you don't find in many drinks. And the stuff is just plain amazing. Creamy, a little spicy. I don't know what to say. For a person from Kolkata, this drink is so ordinary. It's ingrained into the daily routine. Even these ceramic cups are meant to be tossed out into the street after you drink. But for me, I feel pretty lucky to be able to taste it this morning. It's just about gone. It would be all gone, but I'm supposed to leave a little bit left, and this was the perfect start for the morning. There's a buzz here in the early morning. Walking beneath tree-lined streets brings a little bit of calm to a place where calmness is scarce. It's cool, but not really all that cool. This is Kolkata in the summer we're talking about. And it's not crowded yet, but again, we're just going by Kolkata standards. There's already plenty of activity unfolding. Vendors are setting up their stalls.
meals are being prepared. Anyone who has some cooking to do aims to do as much of it as they can right now before it gets even hotter. The smoke rising from the coal-powered street ovens takes over the sidewalks. You want to get ahead of the lunch rush. And this also means there are plenty of opportunities for second breakfast. These are thicker than I thought they would be. Let's hear it for aloo and these street potatoes. I reminded myself to keep a lookout for clues, indicators that Kolkata had truly earned its moniker, City of Joy. And then I met him. He was a barber and he wanted to show me his setup. Street corner barbershops are fairly common around Kolkata, but this guy thought of everything, including how to entertain his customers. I really wish I caught his name. I'm usually pretty intentional about asking that. But we kind of skipped formalities when we realized that we could just pretend the language barrier between us didn't exist. What didn't get lost in translation was kindness. This man had an amazing sense of warmth that shone through, and I love how universal something like that can be. Speaking of things that can kind of be universal, I caught sight of a group of kids playing cricket on the street. It looked just like 1930s Brooklyn, where boys would play stickball in the alleyways. At least I imagine that's what 1930s Brooklyn was like. I wouldn't really know from personal experience. But one thing that definitely does seem to be a universal experience: losing the ball over a fence or on top of a garage and having to spend a large portion of your game time figuring out how you're going to get it back. Now it was only about 10:30, but it was already warming up significantly. The slight morning breeze that was nice to have around had totally disappeared. Of course, I've known India is prone to ridiculous heat waves intensified by climate change. I've seen plenty of news reports like this.
It's simply unbearably hot.
Locals are struggling to cope after days of intense heat.
But I usually see these clips around April or May. I was hoping that August would be far away enough from the hot season, and I was dead wrong. As it turns out, those springtime heat waves are a more recent phenomenon thanks to climate change. The summer heat traditionally strikes right at the time of my visit, late July. And while it's cooler than those heat waves, it's still pretty miserable. The heat in India totally messed with my sense of time. First of all, 6 in the morning looked like this. And part of the reason is probably because the very large country of India is all in one time zone, and Kolkata is far to the east. Because the middle part of the day was so hot, we would start exploring around 5:30 in the morning. Then around 10, we would call a pause. I'd go back to my air-conditioned hotel room, stand in front of a giant fan, and relax for a few hours before continuing the adventure around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Honestly, it felt a bit wrong to be in one of the world's most legendary cities, having to spend the middle of the day doing this.
It's the middle of the day here while I've been on this big adventure, and I'm in my hotel room eating room service biryani in my underwear. You've got to do your exploring during the early and late parts of the day because the middle is just... no, it's not happening. It's way too hot.
I asked Subham how people coped with the heat. It was wild to think that just a few months prior, the heat was even worse. This was some of the most miserable temperature I've dealt with. Unfortunately, his answer was that people simply tried to cope, but couldn't do a whole lot. Those who could would stay indoors or around air conditioning. Some would try and cool off in pools or in the river. But for many of Kolkata's most vulnerable people, it was just something to suffer. Climate change is a concern for all of us, but for those of us who have more privilege, we really have no idea how much harsher this hits people without the same resources. By the mid-afternoon, it was time to head back out. Getting around Kolkata itself is an experience. It seems like every mode of transport is a whole new world to be discovered. I grew a fondness for the hand lettering on public buses. I pondered the complicated ethics of the hand-pulled rickshaws. Kolkata is one of the few places where these still operate. And while they're licensed and regulated, the work is still harsh and miserable. They're mostly drawn by low-paid migrants from Bihar or Odisha, and they have a history tainted by colonialism and racism.
हम लोग का बिहार है, हम लोग का तकदीर में लिखा हुआ है। क्या करने में मजा आएगा? हम लोग घोड़ा बना हुआ है, घोड़ा टनता है।
Many would love to outright ban these rickshaws. However, previous attempts to do so haven't been so straightforward. Many drivers complained that even though their work was harsh, bans cut off their only source of income.
And they are the last generation doing it.
Oh, really? Cities like Madras and Delhi have long histories that predate British imperialism by centuries. But not Kolkata. This city was established to be an administrative hub for the British Empire, which means many of its streets and infrastructure was British designed. On the streets of Kolkata, the yellow cab is an iconic sight. They arrived in India in 1958, while India's independence was still quite recent, and generations in Kolkata have made daily use of them since then. However, they might be in their last days. These have become pushed aside by ride-sharing apps, and during the pandemic, Kolkata went from having 18,000 taxis down to 7,000. What was the name of this neighborhood again? Kumatoli. We're in Kumatoli, home of the pottery shops. Kumartuli is Kolkata's Potter's Alley. In the garages along this narrow street, you can find a number of sculptors working on impressive statues, Indian idols, made from clay taken at the Bengali River. Thought I'd show you for scale just how big some of these are. With a major religious festival on its way, many of these sculptors were working in full swing to have everyone's statues ready in time. Once these are finished, they are impressively smooth and very elaborately detailed. Looking at the facial features and the mustache, and wow, this was well done. To put it quite simply, I like the vibe of this alleyway. Well, if Kolkata is the city of joy, I think there's a fairly strong correlation between joy and art. Having the emotional depth to experience joy syncs up nicely with the self-reflection and emotional intelligence that art stimulates. At the same time, being able to appreciate the aesthetic qualities of everyday life, that demonstrates a willingness to go beyond the motions of routine and to truly celebrate living. The arts in Kolkata are plenty, from visual art and sculpture, of course, to a robust film industry. Kolkata is the main hub of Tollywood, or Bengali cinema. However, if there's one form of art that's captivated the heart of Kolkata the most, it's literature. There are entire districts in Kolkata filled with booksellers, and supposedly you could ask any random individual their favorite book and easily strike up a conversation. Kolkata's been named the most literate city in the world. Alright, well, I think we're in kind of the intellectual hub of Kolkata right now. We're at the Coffee Workers Co-op, which, if you can see all the people here, I think this is a spot where, if you were so inclined, you could just immerse yourself in a conversation with somebody about any given intellectual topic for hours and just have a day of it. This goes back to Kolkata's history of being a place of academia, philosophy, and higher thought. So let's go back to our original question. What makes Kolkata the city of joy?
A lot of people talked about the kindness of people in Kolkata, which I think I've been running into. Some people said that Kolkata has a lower cost of living compared to Delhi and Mumbai, so that helps.
All these explanations make a lot of sense. Plus, you have the appreciation for art, beauty, and thought, the richness of culture, and so on. Whether or not Kolkata is the city of joy, there's certainly a lot of joy to go around. Even a miserable summer's heat can't erase the city's warmth. In Kolkata, you'll find a pastime called Ada. There's no direct translation for this word, but maybe you could try calling it a group conversation, small talk, or a hangout. All of these translations lose the nuance and art that is Ada. A love of conversation and discussion is a hallmark of Bengali culture. An Ada might include a little bit of discussion around politics, art, or science, some lighthearted joking and debate, probably even some food. And while in the US we might associate these types of gatherings with a pub or a barbershop, in Kolkata they can take place anywhere. A chai stand, a home, a veranda. There's something that Kolkata's got that many other cities don't. And to me, this might be the reason why it's the city of joy. It's got a sense of connection to other people. From the children playing cricket, to the art of Ada, to the kindness of a street barber, this sense of connection runs strong. If you ask me to think of what makes something a city of joy, it's hard for me to think of something better than a city that comes with a sense of belonging.